Eric,
Uh-huh.
the Sundays cover of Wild Horses is better than the Rolling Stones original version of Wild Horses.
I generally agree with that. Yeah, I generally agree. It has a it's got an ambience about it that the original doesn't.
Right?
The original's a little more sparse. It's a little more sparse and raw, which of course is fitting with what the Stones did. But I like the airiness of the
it's like
the cover.
it hits you different when you listen to that version.
It's lovely. I think it's a lovely cover.
And that just kind of got me thinking of other things, and I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Because then there's like All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix version.
Even Dylan basically said like that's his song now.
Right. So that's better. So it just got me my brain moving, and I was like, I wonder how many more like songs that were where the remake is a better version than the original. Movies where the remake where you saw something and you were like, oh yeah, this is actually a better version.
I think that happens more times than
people like to admit.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I mean, obviously, it comes down to matters of taste and stuff like that. I mean, I think the go-to example tends to be like All Along the Watchtower is one of the most cited examples of like the cover being better than the original. Although there are lots of others beyond that.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Blinded by the Light by that other band.
Yeah, Manfred Mann
is better than the Bruce Springsteen version.
I don't agree, but that's because I really like that. That's off Greetings from Asbury Park. I love that record, and I love Bruce's version.
Even though that version is annoying in a way. Not the Bruce Springsteen one.
The Manfred Mann.
Yeah. They play that one way more than they play the Bruce Springsteen one.
Well, the very first number one hit that Springsteen had, and if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not getting my trivia wrong, still to this day the only number one hit was Blinded by the Light, but not his version, their version. He had a hit before he ever had hits. That and they also did not Growing Up. What was the other one they did? They did a second Springsteen song as well that was also a hit.
Wait, how? When did they roughly? Was it like only like a year after Spring?
No, basically at the same time. That was way more common back in the day.
That's so weird.
Like there was a time, especially in the 50s and certainly in the 60s, where an artist would come out with a song and there were cover versions like within weeks. That was very, very common.
That seems so strange. Imagine that happening now or something. Wouldn't you be like, or like?
I wish it. I actually wish it did.
Yeah,
I actually wish it did. That. All right. See, so like one of the big innovations in, especially in rock music, in the '60s, the Beatles were a big part of, and the Beach Boys and a couple of others. Dylan was there and so on, was writing original music.
Right.
Half the time they were just doing either all or mostly cover songs. There wasn't a lot of, they weren't writing a lot of originals. Buddy Holly before then was also big on originals, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that used to be super commonplace. It was like, a song would come out and all of a sudden, boom, here's a cover and here's a cover and here's a cover. And it wasn't unusual for the cover versions to be bigger than,
Right. They just found a better sound or sounded cooler or whatever.
Yeah. Now in the era that we grew up in, of course, that became way more unusual. And even when you did get a cover, they would usually come much later. Not always, but usually.
I was gonna say there are some that did happen with grunge, like a little bit, right? Because I have memories of Nirvana covering like the Screaming Tree. It was live though. It wasn't a Screaming Tree song.
No, Meat Puppets.
Meat Puppet song.
Yeah. They covered the 3 Meat Puppet song on Unplugged.
Okay,
but they also did that with members of Meat Puppets.
Right. So it doesn't really count as
But Nirvana did have some their covers weren't hits necessarily. Right. They were part of like as they were coming up. They had some covers of from songs from by the Vaselines and some others. There, you'll find most of those on the Incesticide compilation record that came out right around the time, I think between Bleach and Nevermind. That sort of compiled some of their singles and EP tracks and stuff like that. Here's one that's I wouldn't call it necessarily obscure, but it was never a hit. The cover version, I should say. But it's one I like a lot better than the original. In fact, 2 from this specific band. U2 covered Dancing Barefoot, Patti Smith's song Dancing Barefoot. And the Patti Smith version is wonderful, but I like U2's version just so much more. It's very moody. I mean, Patti Smith's is too, but love it. And then they also for a Christmas album, their cover of "It's Christmas Baby, Please Come Home." I love it.
The U2 version?
Yeah, the U2 version. One of my favorite Christmas songs.
Christmas,
baby, please come home.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Snow's coming down.
Okay, yeah.
Lots of people around.
Christmas,
baby, please come home. Christmas. They're singing "Deck the Hall."
Okay, yeah.
I love.
That is a good version. I agree.
I love their version. Though using Christmas songs might be a little bit.
I was
going
to say, I think that's a Christmas
cheat.
songs. Everybody always is redoing all of.
Yeah,
Christmas
so maybe
songs.
that's a little bit of a cheat. I like Oh no! You know what? It's close. Jane's Addiction does a couple cover of "Ripple" from Grateful Dead, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's pretty close because the Dead's original is also pretty excellent as well. But the Jane's version is terrific. I really like that one. One of their better covers. They did "Sympathy for the Devil," which was so.
Yeah. So did Jane. Yeah.
They did "Rock and Roll" from Velvet Underground. And it's all right, but their cover of "Ripple's" really good. Ripple in still water. I don't think
I know that you said Jane's Addiction. I know that the sympathy for the Devil version. I don't really like that version better.
You know who also does a lousy cover of "Sympathy for the Devil"?
Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses, not very good.
No.
I don't. They've done lots of covers over the years. I like very few of them.
Because they also did "Live and Let Die."
I don't like their I don't like their version of "Live and Let Die." Though their cover of "Mama Kin," the Aerosmith song, is really good.
I don't know if I heard that one.
Yeah, their take on "Mama Kin" is pretty excellent. I like that one a lot. That's on the "Live Like a Suicide" EP, which came out before "Appetite for Destruction," and then it was put on "Lies," the mini album that came out after "Appetite."
Oh, okay.
The one that Patience is on.
Patience.
Yeah.
I've been walking the streets tonight.
They've done tons of covers, but they're sort of so on covers. Now, a good cover band who does a lot of really good covers, though I don't think any that surpass the original. Pearl Jam has covered hundreds of songs. I have in my personal media library something like a 8 or 9 quote album a collection of just covers that they've done over the years. I think the only one their cover of Sonic Reducer from the Dead Boys might surpass the original.
I just thought it too.
And actually they have a fantastic cover of Crazy Mary.
Oh yeah, I love that. I actually I remember hearing that back in like the early the 90s.
Yeah, really good.
On like a bootleg album or something. Wild-eyed Crazy Mary.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I just thought it too, where I would. They're both. Well, I'll just say them, and then Metallica.
The whole 598 EP, which is nothing but covers, because I love all that.
I was going to say when they covered what is it?
Name, because he's huge. Kenny Rogers.
On the road again. That song. Actually, when Metallica covered that.
Is that they did a Kenny Rogers? Oh
yeah.
No, that's not a Kenny Rogers song. Is it? I think I know.
Oh no, not Kenny Rogers. Seeger.
Turn the Page.
Yeah, that's Seeger or whatever. It's not Kenny Rogers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Did they? Oh yeah, I think I do remember them doing that. Yeah, that's a good.
I'm on the road again. I was gonna say I like the original better, just because it sort of, I don't know, it hits a little bit.
It's a good cover, but yeah, I don't think it surpasses the original.
But the other one I was gonna say was Baker Street by Foo Fighters.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool version. I like the original because it's such a weird song. It has like a weird sound to it, the original Baker Street. I don't know how to... But the Foo Fighter one is kind of cool because it's kind of got a little bit of a harder...
I will say a couple that people often cite as better than the original, but I disagree. Actually, and here too, both the original from the same artist. I Will Always Love You. Dolly Parton.
Oh,
of course,
yeah,
you know,
Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston is one of the biggest songs of all time.
It is better than and then I love Dolly Parton, but
no, see,
Whitney Houston version.
No, see, I disagree, and that's not because I'm down on Whitney Houston. Yeah. I think she's one of the most incredible singers of all time. Absolutely amazing voice, and despite it being overplayed, yeah, her vocal performance on that cover is phenomenal. But I like Dolly's better.
Did you hear the Dolly version first?
No, heard it.
Oh,
after.
Really? Because like for me, I felt like I heard the Whitney Houston, and then someone was like, "Oh, that's a Dolly Parton song," and then I went and listened to that, and I was like,
And here's the same thing where I heard the cover first, and then when I went back and heard the original, I was like, oh, I like the original way better. And the cover is from one of my favorite bands, and that is the White Stripes covering Jolene.
Oh yeah,
it's a great cover.
It is.
It's a great cover.
That's one of my favorite songs by them. Actually,
it is a fantastic cover.
That was the song that my kids used to like. We used to play that in the car for my kids, and they were like, who is this band?" And I was like, "Well, it's a Dolly Parton song."
But once I went back and listened to Dolly's, I was like, "Okay, this is the shit right here."
I think a lot of like with that for me, the Dolly Parton one, even though the White Stripes one is just a banger, like it's just such a great song. The Dolly Parton one is better because you know why she's singing it, and I feel like there's more of a like emotion from her singing the version of the song.
Well, plus
like it's tied to her.
Yeah. Plus that it's got, all right, like you said, the White Stripes version is a banger, and it is like they slam it as they did just about everything. Meg is like super underrated.
Yeah.
On the drums because she just. She was a titan. Mm-hmm. So anyway, like it's a banger, but Dolly's just has like a vibe, and plus there's like a little groove to it.
Yeah, there is. There's like a little bit of a groove.
There's this like great little groove that underpins the whole thing. Really, really, really good. I have to admit that Dolly is somebody who I've come to later in life. Growing up, I was like, Dolly, like I'd sort of dismissed her along with like Kenny Rogers and some of that other stuff. I still sort of a little bit dismiss Kenny Rogers. I never. But only because I haven't explored his stuff yet. It might turn out like if I tried him out, I would like his stuff more. But in more recent years, since the world has a well-justified love affair with Dolly Parton, I was like, let me go back and start checking out this because I came to respect the way she's handled her career and herself over the years. Even early on, where she was basically like, a lot of record execs and all that were mistaking her for like this little bimbo.
I thought she was a bimbo,
but she knew exactly what the F she was doing. And
I mean, she was traveling on her own, like going to these places to perform and stuff.
So I started to go back and like, all right, let me see what like the real deal early on Dolly's all about. And I started to listen to her stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, like I get it.
Yeah,
like I get it. Like this is really great. Like she's phenomenal, fantastic.
Yeah, she's worth going back and finding her, even like deep cut stuff from her.
Yeah. Agreed. So you said movie remakes. I mean, I feel like we probably touched on this in a previous video because there are a couple of obvious ones. John Carpenter's The Thing is one of the first that springs to mind. That's a remake, and I don't think there's any question that is better than the original. I wonder is the 1980s version of The Blob better than the original, or is it campier? It's campier. If I remember right, I haven't seen it in forever.
I'm trying to. I can't really think of any movies because I guess they would have to be remakes from old movies to be because I can't really think of anything that's been redone.
It also movies
hold a different sort of.
Well, it's also a little tougher because often they're not as much remakes as they are adaptations of the same original source material. Like Ben-Hur is a good example. The Ben-Hur starring Charlton Heston, of course, is widely hailed as one of the big great epics of its era. Really great movie and all that. But Ben-Hur had been made a couple of times prior to that too, including what's that? I think 1921. Maybe it was 1919. I think 1921. But as a huge epic then too, a bunch of people died in the making of that.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That original. And that was hailed as like one of the great epics of that time as well.
It happens.
But the Heston version, of course, sort of have since supplanted that. But then the question becomes, okay, is that a remake or is it just a readaptation of the same source material? Because sometimes the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies actually are a good example. They're technically an adaptation of the books, but Peter Jackson, by his own admission, before he even started to make the movies, he hadn't read the books yet. He had only been exposed to Ralph Bakshi's animated one.
Which is, when you watch the you see the, I'm like, oh, that scene is in the movie.
There are bits where that are lifted from the Bakshi version, because that's what initially influenced Jackson. So the Jackson Lord of the Rings movies aren't remakes exactly, but portions of them, especially Fellowship, portions of them are basically Jackson remaking the animated film that he loved. Like the Bilbo's party, especially the proud feet moment.
Yeah, that's literally the same shot.
Yeah, and the encounter with the Nazgul in the forest, that's Jackson remaking Bakshi, as well as the Nazgul assaulting their assault in Bree, in the village of Bree. Mm-hmm. That's lifted from Bakshi, because the book plays out much different, much differently. In fact, the Nazgul aren't assaulting. They're not having an assault on Bree. They're in this completely different place, Crick Hollow, where Frodo is supposed to be hiding out, but it turns out he left in secret.
Right.
He wasn't actually there. And the Nazgul do that sort of assault, cutting up the beds and all that there.
Oh, okay. It's not in Bree.
But Bakshi sort of streamlined it for his movie, and Jackson took the same thing and did the same thing, and even staged it the same way, of the Nazgul above the bed and all the rest of this stuff. So he's adapting an adaptation, but the whole trilogy, of course, isn't
right.
So yeah, like,
but you could say he's actually what is the term? It's more about him giving
homage.
Praise,
it's an homage to Bakshi.
Yeah,
you can make that argument as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh God, I feel like the cover song thing. I had more time, I could jog my memory with some of the better ones. I say it like REM had a lot of really great covers in their early days.
I was gonna say the whole album, Dead Letter Office, is all just covers.
There's a lot of covers in there. Superman was one of their better known covers. They did a lot of Velvet Underground covers, none of which were better than the original, but still good. You know what? Here's a cover that's better than the original.
Oh boy.
Run DMC, Walk This Way.
I agree. It is, because when you do hear the original, it doesn't have
I think, and I like early Aerosmith.
Yeah.
Like pre-80s comeback Aerosmith, like that 70s era when they were still like just scuzzy.
And
like Toys in the Attic is a phenomenal record.
And his voice is completely different.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand, but
yeah, seriously, and anyone who only knows Aerosmith from like their 80s and 90s
era,
that, and if you didn't care for that, go back and listen to some of those 70s records, especially Toys in the Attic. That's a ripping, nasty, scuzzy, dirty, filthy record. Really good stuff. But Run DMC, thanks to Rick Rubin,
I agree.
I think that it kills it.
I have another remake that I think you'll agree is a better remake than the original.
Okay.
Smoking in the Boys' Room by Motley Crue. Smoking in the Boys' Room.
You know what's funny? Brainy Brian and I were just talking about that the other day.
That song?
About that specific song, and Motley Crue in general.
Yeah.
Because I was a big fan of Crue growing up. Now, sort of in retrospect, I think the first record is front to back phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Shout at the Devil.
No. Too Fast for Love.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah, Too Fast for Love
was before Shout at the Devil?
Yeah. Okay. Too Fast for Love is a great record. Basically, everything after that is kind of a little spotty. Like, all the records, I feel like, is like, there's some really good stuff, and then half of just like bad, cheesy stuff. But it was with Theater of Pain, which is where Smoking in the Boys' Room is on. Theater of Pain is when I first got into them. But even at the time, I did not like Smoking in the Boys' Room.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I just didn't care for it. I think it's on that record as well, or no, I'm sorry, it was on Girls, 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 where they do Jailhouse Rock.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They do Jailhouse Rock. It's terrible though. It's not. It is not good. It is not.
It's not good to cover in.
Yeah, Crue hasn't aged well for me. I have a fondness for still a bunch of their songs. And I'll still go to the mat for Home Sweet Home anytime. even though
I learned to play it on a piano. That was like one of the first songs I learned to play on piano.
like even though power ballads are like way played out, I'll still defend that one. I think it's a lovely song, and Mick Mars' guitar solo is one of my favorites. But
I think the Shout of the Devil album isn't that bad. That's the first one that I remember hearing.
Yeah, that's the first time. I think that's the first time I was exposed to them, only because like the what seemed to me the creepy video for "Looks to Kill" was on MTV a lot, and it was like, who are these guys? Look at them! Oh, they're like they've got like the torches and the leather and the hair, and it was like, oh, these guys are weird.
The first time I heard that was an older kid, older brother of a kid that we were hanging out in my room, and he like came in with the tape, and he put it in on my tape deck, and he turned the lights off.
Oh yeah, because the beginning
and
it's got that ambient
shout, the devil. Yeah, there's like that whole like narration in the beginning of it or something.
Our nations grew weak, their cities filled the slums, while evil stood strong.
And I was like, oh,
in the depths of hell come the blacks of hates. We fear awaits you. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I remember when like at for a time thinking like, these guys are dangerous. This is dangerous music. This is like, this is edgy. Now it seems so like silly and corny to me. But yeah, at the time as a kid, like I get why people got into that stuff.
Yeah.
They of course were way more glammy than some of the others, but I remember people getting into like WASP.
Oh God.
And everyone thought, which of course I guess is not true, but like, WASP, it stands for We Are Satan's People.
We are Satan's preachers.
Yeah, all that, like so all those like edgy metal bands at the time, the metalheads were like, this is like the counterculture, man. This is the edgy, dead, dangerous stuff.
Quiet Riot.
Yeah. I mean, Quiet Riot was big on. Actually, there you go. Those are covers. What was their big cover?
I'm trying to think.
Was it a Slade tune? And was it? I don't think it was "Come on, Feel the Noise." Oasis does a really good cover of "Come on, Feel the Noise." Actually,
really,
like it's really good. Yeah, it's legitimately really good.
Huh.
But though Oasis's covers often were very good, with the exception of maybe "I Am the Walrus." But the only reason why that one wasn't great is because it was a live recording and it was like a shoddy early recording. But yeah, they did a few covers that were pretty solid, and their version of "Come on, Feel the Noise" is like quite excellent. It's loud as fuck.
Huh.
Which is, as it should be. Here you go. Here's one better than the original. Bang a Gong.
Yeah, I agree. The original is, when you hear the original version.
I think the original was a T-Rex.
I think so. Yeah, right.
I think so. Yeah. But yeah, I like Robert Palmer's version better. It's like cheesy, but in the right way.
Yeah.
Here's one not better than the original. 311 doing a love song. It was The Cure's love song.
Yeah, but I don't think I ever heard 311 do it.
It got real big for a little bit there. They kind of reggae'd it up a little bit.
Of course.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan.
I can't think of any. When I drive home, I'll be thinking of a bunch of them are going to pop into my head.
I'm sure as soon as we're done recording, there's going to be like a million that pop into both our heads. It could be like, oh, we should have brought up that one or that one. But you know what? That's what the comment section is for.
It's true. I was just going to say, yeah.
That's what the comment section is for.
Let us know the covers that were actually better than the originals.
Yeah, I mean, there's here you go. The Beatles, Twist and Shout.
Oh yeah, who were the Chubby Checkers or something?
I think so. Yeah, I mean,
it had to be.
Their version is just ripping.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one. It's
John's
like
vocal performance on that is John's vocal performance on that is nuts. Like just shredding his throat on that. Really, really good stuff.
I heard that first on Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I can understand that. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's pretty wild to think that like in the 80s when we were kids, the Beatles seemed like this ancient relic of a band.
That was what your parents listened to when they were kids.
Yeah, but they had literally only just broken up like 10, 12 years prior.
Yeah.
10, 12, 15 years.
But that's what Nirvana was too. That was actually longer. So it's weird to think that like
oh yeah.
Nirvana to my kids was actually a longer period than the Beatles were to my parents.
I remember talking music
or to me to the Beatles were my parents.
Some years back, talking music with a friend's daughter. Like, she was a teenager at the time, and just mentioned, having seen Nirvana, and she was like gobsmacked at the idea.
Yeah.
In the same way that I guess I would have been about the idea of like somebody who's
seen the Beatles,
who saw the,
or even Led Zeppelin. I remember my dad, I think, saw Led Zeppelin. I was like, wow, you've actually like seen them?
Yeah, and to me it was like, but like it wasn't forever ago, but
it was.
Your perception of time changes as you get older. Because to me, despite the fact that like all this grunge era stuff is older than classic rock was when we were growing up. Like, to me, it's like, well, this was just a couple of years back, It's just yesterday. Like, no. Like, like when I was making fun of The Who for touring in, like, the late 80s and the 90s. I was like, come on, old guys, it's time to hold it up. And meanwhile, now you got, like, Pearl Jam and all the rest of these dudes are touring, and they're, like, way older than The Who was.
Yeah, to me, when you...
Like, Tool, it's, like, I think, like, isn't like, like, some of these guys are I think at least one or two of them are in their 60s, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's
funny to just to me when I talk about it's even worse than when you hear of like grunge bands going around touring now. It feels like when my parents or somebody would be talking about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that just reminded me of another one better than the original. 9 Inch Nails cover of Physical.
By
no, Adamant. Not that. No, not that one. Not the Olivia Newton-John song.
Let's get physical. I would love to hear Trent Reznor do "Let's Get Physical" by Olivia Newton-John.
I think he could do it.
He would turn it into something twisted.
Yeah.
But who was it? By Adamant?
I think it was. I think it was Adamant's song. It was on Broken, the mini album that came out between Pretty Hate Machine and Downward Spiral, which is my favorite 9 Inch Nails release.
Yeah.
I think for me that's like where it all came together perfectly for them, and that's my favorite Nin record still to this day because it's just fucking brutal.
I mean, that was the height of his.
And that though, and the fun thing about that cover too, it was it was released. Broken was released as an EP, but in the earliest releases of it, which I believe I still have my copy. It also came hidden inside the CD case, a little mini CD about that big that had a couple of additional songs. That was one of them.
Okay.
That were just sort of hidden in there in its own little like slipcase. Now I think when you get it, it's all together. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is so cool, like this little hidden thing. Remember back in the day when like CDs would have hidden tracks?
Oh yeah, what was the one that
either at the sometimes they were at the end,
like
sometimes
let it run.
Yeah, like Nirvana's Endless Nameless was like that. It was like there were like 15 minutes of silence after the end of Nevermind, and then Endless Nameless was on there. But then there were some really zany ones where like at the start of the CD you would have to go back.
Yeah.
And then there would be a song hidden in the front of it. Like there was a lot of like weird tricks like that some artists did.
Oh yeah, there's and I can't think of it, but there was one band that did that where you really had to let the CD play like pretty far out. Like you had to just let it go.
Tool has something like that on
it's like
Opiate.
14 minutes or something crazy.
Tool's a little bit, and I don't think it's a full-on song. It's just this little spoken word bit with like cricket sounds and stuff like that, like at the end of Opiate. But if I remember right, that goes on like forever. It's really long until you finally get this little bit at the end. I actually, at the time, that kind of stuff was fascinating, but I find it super irritating, especially because like,
Oh, like now?
Yeah. Because, I purposely, like when I put together my digital library, I started to chop that shit out.
Oh, yeah, because we're going to do just, like you said, it was fun at the time because it was like an Easter egg, like to find, for a friend to be like, did you hear a hidden track? Da. But now, you just want to either hear it or not.
And I won't be able to remember it. Maybe this will be a fun one to end on, because it'll give people a little research project so they can find it. There was at least one artist who they hid a song on their record by having grooves between the grooves. And so you had to drop the needle just right to catch the hidden music in between the music.
Huh.
Which is a super great trick. There's a few like vinyl things like that where people have done odd things, like having an endless loop in the middle. There was at least one artist who you actually had to remove the label in the middle to reveal.
And it was actually, it's some
oddball stuff like that, which is pretty neat. But yeah, the one in particular, I'll look it up later, but it won't be in this video, so it's up to you folks to find it. Yeah, like grooves within grooves. Grooves within grooves, man. All right, that's good.